Well, today we're going to talk about the Pan-Methodist Commission and what that means and who that is. But before we do that, I wanted to step back one step and talk briefly about what it means to be in full communion relationship. So you can find information about full communion relationships in paragraph 431 of the Book of Discipline. And they're very special relationships that indicate that, that churches have committed to live in a visible unity. They are dialogues that are entered into by the Council of Bishops. And then after the dialogue reaches a point where they're ready to move into full communion, that full communion relationship has to be ratified by the General Conference. So there are kind of full communion relationships all over the world or regional, but the ones that belong to the whole United Methodist Church start with the COB and are ratified by the General Conference. So if you are in full communion, you recognize each other as members of the Universal Church. You recognize the authenticity of each other's sacraments, and then you seek to include each other in the Eucharist. You affirm the authenticity of each other's ministries. You recognize the validity of each other's vocational offices of ministry, vocational ministries. And in effect, that means that it is okay to have a mutual exchange of clergy. Full communion commits the churches to working together to visible unity, but it's important to note that it doesn't change anything about the two separate churches. They are still individual churches, and I'm letting some more folks in here, so I hope they got it in. Let me just pause and make sure they got in. I hope we see, okay. So full communion relationship, that's what that is. The Pan-Methodist Commission is the result of a very unusual but successful multilateral dialogue that reached full communion among all its members in 2012. So 4 of those churches are actually global. The AME, AMEZ, CME, and United Methodist are global. The rest are in the United States. And the 6 churches that reached this multilateral full communion are the AME, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, the African Union Methodist Protestant Church, the Christian Methodist Church, the Union American Methodist Episcopal Church, and the United Methodist Church. So 6 communions came together. So after you reach full communion, which these 6 churches did, then it's typical to set up a commission to make sure that that full communion relationship continues to be lived out. And so now we have a Pan-Methodist Commission, and they meet yearly to keep enlivened the full communion relationship. And this year they just met last week on March 12th. So we have 6 members of that Pan-Methodist Commission. The chair is Bishop Jonathan Holston of South Carolina United Methodist Church. Our other delegates are Bishop Dick, Bishop Carcagno, Mr. Bird Bonner, Ms. Dee Hicks, and Ms. Mary Ellen Grace. And then also Reverend Marvin Moss, Reverend Dr. Pamela Lightsey, and Reverend Dr. Vicki Sizemore Baldwin. Then I serve as their staff person. They're doing several good things together, and I want to highlight a few of them because this is what I want you to know. Good things are happening. So the first thing I want to mention is the Children in Poverty campaign. And you may have, like in Kentucky, I've heard of the Children in Poverty campaign. I never really knew until I started in this role that it's a Pan-Methodist Commission invention. But the Children in Poverty campaign raises money to give grants to projects that clearly work with children in poverty. They support the Children's Sabbath every year. They work with seminary and college students to create these projects and other projects as they are brought to them. They're looking to have a liaison in every annual conference. And they want those liaisons to simply share stories about excellence in ministry with children, particularly children in poverty. So they're not necessarily asking annual conferences to do anything new, but to make this a campaign where all the Pan-Methodist churches are working together with children in poverty. The two leaders of this campaign are Dr. Luther Smith, who is a professor emeritus from Emory, and Dr. Mary Love, who is also the administrator of the Pan-Methodist Commission. So that's the first really wonderful project. The second thing is a joint chaplaincy endorsement process. So this is US based, but about 3 years ago, the Pan-Methodist Commission entered into a process whereby all those who want to serve as chaplains go through the same initial vetting and engagement process. So now all Pan-Methodists who are interested in becoming chaplains go to this website that is on the screen now, I think, yep, or call the phone number. And that's how you get started to be endorsed as a chaplain. And the process takes you all the way through to where you have to be approved by the specific denomination. If you want to be a United Methodist, you would be approved by the United Methodist system. But all of us start together, which is a really wonderful ecumenical ministry. Also want to mention that they do a young adult convocation. All 6 of the communions involved in the Pan-Methodist Commission are encouraged to have at least one delegate who is a young adult. Our young adult is Mary Ellen Grace from the East Ohio Annual Conference. And the young adults meet together separately and with the older adults, and they design projects together. And their biggest project is an annual gathering of young adults in the place where the Pan-Methodist Commission meets, wherever that might be. It did not happen this year, but it will happen. They've already started planning their event for 2022. Then the thing that the bishops like the most about the Pan-Methodist Commission is the biannual bishops consultation. So biannual meaning it happens every other year. And that's when all the bishops of all the 6 churches are invited to come together for a retreat somewhere in the United States. And the last of these gatherings was in Alabama in 2019. And the purpose is simply fellowship and networking, but also they choose to stand together on social justice issues. And they very clearly make a visible witness for the unity of those 6 churches. The gathering was supposed to have taken place this past week, but for obvious reasons, it was canceled. But it will resume again in 2023, in March 2023 in Atlanta. And it's my understanding that for United Methodist bishops, the United Methodist Church covers the travel costs for all United Methodist bishops that want to go if there are Pan-Methodist relationships and churches in their annual conference. So, so that is the bulk of what I wanted to share. What questions do you have?
I just have a comment, if I could.
Of course.
The General Commission on United Methodist Men entered into a relationship with the AME, the Zion, and the CME Church for a long time, and it was a lot of patience on everybody's part. But we found the person who has my job as that responsibility within those denominations and have met with them. We met all together, and they also met with us last week when we have a larger circle of denominational leaders from all kinds of denominations, men's ministry. And so it was neat to have them there because one of the topics we wanted to talk about was race relations. And without them there, we'd be a bunch of old white guys. So they joined into that, and it's been wonderful to have that relationship. I just encourage more work between those three. I have not been able to find the other two. I think they're much smaller than the AME.
Yes. The two of the smaller denominations are located mostly on the East Coast and honestly mostly in the Delaware area. One of them is larger than the other, but they are both pretty small.
But it's just been a rich experience to work with them, and we're discovering all kinds of things together. One of the prayer vigils that we did online that had several hundred people there for 3 hours was one they participated in one, and then those three denominations and Methodist men did one just for us, and it just went really, really well. But I've taken at least 6 or 8 years. I remember when we made the promise at General Conference that we would be better at this, and I took it seriously. Really glad that we found the right people, and they've really enjoyed it, and they've enriched us a great deal. I think I know I've learned more than they learned from me. So it's been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Gil. And if the rest of us don't know, Gil is the General Secretary of the United Methodist Men, and the United Methodist Men have been truly doing an excellent job upholding Pan-Methodist relationships with prayer meetings, and Gil has been leading all of that, and it is a blessing. Thank you. The other thing I wanted to point out and see if Kyle wants to say anything else about it is that he has done the work to create a map so we can see where the Pan-Methodist churches have overlapping leadership. So if your bishop wants to know who the bishop of one of the Pan-Methodist churches in her or his area, Kyle has done the work to create that information.
Yeah, I can just chime in on that. It's we did this for all of our at least the main U.S. based full communion relationships. So we have a similar thing with the ELCA. We haven't done it with Moravians yet. We did it with the Episcopalians in anticipation of moving that relationship forward and an attempt to get our bishops to continue partnering together. We also did it with the Pan-Methodist churches as well. So these are spreadsheet resources, but it lays out where all of our Episcopal areas and the Episcopal districts of the Pan-Methodist churches overlap, so that we can have direct context there. It's been a little while since I've looked at it. That was a few years ago when we first put those together. It could probably use some updating at this point. But yeah, those are helpful, I think, ways to sort of just see on paper all the different ways that we overlap.
Gene, I have a quick question about this. So I love the Pan-Methodist Commission. I love that all these denominations are working together. I'm curious about racial reconciliation and how that has been a part of the work that these groups have done. Of course, many of these denominations would not have existed if the Methodist Episcopal Church was not racist and kind of pushed people out. And so, of course, that's just part of our history. So I wonder if anybody here maybe knows about, like, how has this commission, as they've come together throughout the years, how has being honest about that history been part of their ability to come together, and maybe how does that continue on if it does? I'd just be curious to know about that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That is, our sin is ever before us. The Pan-Methodist Commission is a visible example of trying to step into that and through that and beyond that. Our sin is ever before us, though. And in fact, there's a litany that we say at every opening worship service of a Pan-Methodist Commission, and then again during the bishop's consultation. And the litany includes a snippet, a very short paragraph of history from each of the churches. And the United Methodist Church starts, and that litany acknowledges that it is because of our behavior that the other churches needed to form. So it's always there. It's always there.
I was real upfront, Daniel, with the group that when I first met with him, and I called it what it was. It's our sin, and I can't undo that, but I can move us forward. So that was something that that I really didn't really felt like that I had to admit that. You can't say, well, you know, you all chose to leave for other reasons. It made it impossible for them to stay, and so we've been really upfront with it, and they've accepted that and said, you know, thanks for saying that. Let's move on and let's do some stuff together, and that's the best mending I can.
And how incredibly gracious it is for the 5 historically Black churches to even want to be in full communion with us. It's a gift. It is a huge gift. I will also say that the young adult group right now is working on trying to collect resources from all 6 denominations on 3 specific aspects of fighting racism. So that is a project they're working on. And that actually parallels what the young adults in Churches Uniting in Christ are doing. So we're trying to connect the Pan-Methodist young adults with the Churches Uniting in Christ young adults so that they can be working on collecting these anti-racism resources together and hold them up for all 6 churches, and in the Pan-Methodist case, all 10 churches.